Well, good morning, everybody. If you'll just give me a moment, I just want to breathe in all the good karma in this room so I can take some back to Vermont with me. Do you remember, Reverend Harada, when I came here for the first time? How many years ago was it? Do you know? About 10 or 11, or at least, yeah. So this year I'm very lucky because this is my second time this year that I have gotten to visit the temple, and I understand you get 2 times for free before you have to start paying your membership dues. So I'll see you next year. But I want to thank Reverend Harada for inviting me, and I'd like to thank my wife and my daughter Chani for accompanying me on this trip. They're not only my family, but they're my security detail, so they keep an eye out for me. So this is, from my perspective, this is kind of the Thanksgiving service, right? You don't have a service next Sunday, right? And Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, so I'm very honored to be able to actually speak at this particular service. And I'm going to start by offering something from a different tradition, from the tradition of the Benedictines. So if you were to become a Benedictine monk and you were to enter a monastery, there's a series of rules. And this is the first rule. This is a modern interpretation by a man named John McQuiston, but this is the first rule of the Benedictine monks. Attend to these instructions. Listen with the heart and mind. They are provided in a spirit of goodwill. These words are addressed to anyone who's willing to renounce the delusion that the meaning of life can be learned. Whoever is ready to take up the greater weapon of fidelity to a way of living that transcends understanding. The first rule is, live this life and do whatever is done in a spirit of thanksgiving. Abandon attempts to achieve security. They are futile. Give up the search for wealth. It is demeaning. Quit the search for salvation. It is selfish. And come to comfortable rest in the certainty that with those who participate in this life, with an attitude of thanksgiving, you will receive its full promise. So I'd like to offer you a haiku poem. Violets here and there in the ruins of my burnt house. Violets here and there in the ruins of my burnt house. The poet who wrote this haiku is a woman named Shokyu Ni. She was born in the year 1713, and she was a well-known Japanese female poet during the Edo period in Japan. After her husband died, she became a Buddhist nun. This is the preface to her poem. On my return from Tsukushi at the close of March, I found that my hut had been destroyed by fire. Looking at the ruins, I composed this verse. Now in California, during the past few weeks, how many people have returned to their home and found that it was turned into ashes? This poem asks us how we will work with the challenge and tragedy of our lives. Our own homes may be standing, but maybe our marriage is in ashes, or maybe our health is in ashes, or our career, or our financial situation, as discovered by those who put their life savings in the hands of Bernie Madoff. How do we manage disappointment? Do we blame others? Do we get angry at ourselves? Do we cry? Do we pout? Do we wallow in self-pity? Perhaps the biggest problem that we have is that we've come to believe that we shouldn't have problems. The poet of this haiku shows that it's possible to do something beyond the ruins, to see something beyond the ruins. Some flowers, specifically in this case, some small violets. She's not an optimist. She's not in denial. She simply sees things as they are. In this Japanese method of self-reflection that I teach called Nikon, we have a maxim, and the maxim is, examine life outside the boundaries of your suffering. Examine life outside the boundaries of your suffering. So the poet offers us her secret to coping with difficulty. When our attention is drawn to our grief, our sadness, our disappointment, we are absorbed into the misfortune that is upon us, and we often fail to see anything else. Like the many ways that life is caring for us, trying to help us to extricate ourselves from the difficulties that we're facing. But there is something else. There's a friend who offers us clothes after the fire. There's a friend who offers us a room in their home where we can stay. When we're out of work, someone offers us a job or a loan. After our accident, somehow we seem to acquire a neck brace or crutches. Violets don't always appear as flowers. Examine life outside the boundaries of your suffering. Just because we don't feel loved doesn't mean that we aren't loved. Just because we don't feel cared for doesn't mean that we aren't cared for. We have to look up and look around us and behind us. Sometimes we have to just look right in front of us. Life has not forsaken us. Don't mistake pain for abandonment. When you're weighed down by your challenges, when you find yourself collapsing and gasping for spiritual breath, look in the shadows. In the shadows, blessings may be hidden. Love may be hidden. You discover what's in the shadows by shining a light of awareness. And that shift of attention won't necessarily rescue you from your problems, but it will remind you that you're not alone. Violets here and there in the ruins of my burnt house. Let's talk a bit more about shadows. There's another Nikon maxim that goes like this: gratitude disappears in the shadow of entitlement. Gratitude disappears in the shadow of entitlement. Whenever you believe that you're entitled to something, you're placing it in a shadow. It's like being given a beautiful rose bush and planting it in the darkest spot in the forest, where it gets no sun at all. And so what will happen? Well, eventually that rose bush will die. The more we think we deserve something, the more difficult it is to genuinely appreciate it as a gift. My wife brings me a hot cup of coffee. My daughter fills the car with gas. My colleague sends me a book that she thinks I'll like. But if I think I deserve these things, my responses might be, "It's about time you made that coffee." Wow, for once she actually filled the car up with gas. That's the first time she ever sent me something without my asking for it. But suppose I start from a different place. A place where I'm not entitled to anything, where I don't deserve anything. I'm not entitled to coffee or to gas or to even drive a car. I don't deserve a nice dinner, even on my birthday. I don't even deserve a Wi-Fi signal or cell phone service. Suppose you could start your day with a sense that you were entitled to nothing. Everything at that point would truly become and be experienced as a gift. The use of a toilet, hot water, a toothbrush, the use of a telephone, the roads that you use to drive to work in the morning. Each of these items and experiences is like a rose bush planted in a sunny garden. After a while, the whole garden is full of roses. How do you trade your sense of self-entitlement for an expanse of roses as far as you can see? You simply realize that you've earned nothing, that you deserve nothing. Everything you have has been given to you. Everything you think you've accomplished is grace. What made it possible for you to be here in the first place? What made it possible for you to read, to speak English? It's all grace. It's all tariki. The word for shadow in Latin is umbra. It's a darkness that is created when light is blocked by an obstacle. In Japanese, the word for shadow is kage. If we look around the hondo here, we can see walls. But what's inside a wall? Have you ever seen or walked through a home that was under construction or being renovated, or maybe you actually walked into the hondo at some point when it was being renovated? If you have, you may have seen the inside of the wall before it was closed up and painted. There's important things inside walls. First, there are electrical wires. Wherever you see an outlet, it means that there are wires that run all the way to the source of your electricity, like a system of nerves that travel through your body. And because these wires are placed inside the walls, you can't see them. But they allow you to plug in a lamp or a toaster, or charge your cell phone or your television. Most walls are built around a structure of wooden studs. These are pieces of wood. They used to be trees. And when they're nailed together skillfully, they hold up your house. You can't see the wooden studs. They're invisible. There may also be insulation inside your walls, insulation that keeps the heat in on a chilly morning or a cold night. And it also, if you have air conditioning in the summer, it helps to keep you cool on a hot summer day. Now, your body is kind of a home also. Your skin, most of your body, you can't see because of your skin. So most of your body is inside. It's under your skin. But what's inside is really extraordinary. You have a heart that never stops beating. Last night when you were sleeping, your heart just kept beating for you without you doing anything. You have a brain with 85 to 90 billion neurons. 85 to 90 billion neurons in your brain. You have a network of blood vessels that, if they were laid out end to end, would measure about 60,000 miles. 60,000 miles of blood vessels inside your body. You have a nervous system with about 1,300 nerve cells, 1,300 nerve cells per square inch, embedded in your skin. You have over 200 bones. And of course, there are many critical organs that keep you alive every day, like your liver, your kidney. All this and much more is inside a body that you think of as you. And it's all hidden under your skin. There's a Japanese word called okage-sama. Many of you are probably familiar with that phrase, okage-sama. It's often used conversationally to express thanks. The root of this word is kage, which means shadow. It acknowledges that there are unseen forces in this world that makes your life possible. Okage-sama is grounded in an awareness of what's inside the walls, what's inside your body, what's under your skin. Of course, it goes much further than that, because virtually every aspect of life is supported by unseen forces like objects, energy, people, even money. These are the elements of our life that are in the shadow. So to see them, we have to look very deeply at our own life. We have to see with more than just our eyes. My favorite translation of the word Nikon is seeing oneself with the mind's eye. During a Nikon retreat, we offer an exercise to people. And the exercise is to identify a particular skill, like driving or cooking or playing a musical instrument. And then you're asked to trace that skill back to its roots, to the unseen forces that made it possible for you to have that skill. When we do this, we sometimes find out that it's an endless exercise, an investigation that can never be completed. So I play the piano a little bit. I've been playing blues piano for the past few years. And yet I've never been able to fully comprehend what has made it possible for me to play the piano. My mother encouraged me to take lessons, and she was always singing and playing music around the house, which was very inspiring to me as a kid. My father paid for the first piano I practiced on, and he would drive me to my lessons, and he would wait for me while I was taking my lesson. My teacher, Mrs. Braverman, provided me with instruction and sheet music. She was able to teach me because she had a teacher when she was a young child. The piano itself is an amazing instrument. Yeah, I see that you have one over here today. It has 225 strings, which are made from high carbon steel. Each of those strings has to be tuned precisely and regularly to maintain the piano's lovely sound. The keys themselves are made from wood, sometimes plastic. Then there are people who transported the pianos on which I practiced. There was gas and oil required for my father's car when he drove me to the lessons. My father received money from his job at a bakery in order to pay for my lessons. My hearing allowed me to hear music so I could learn how to play. It just goes on and on, endlessly. Okage-sama is the recognition that these forces are hidden in the shadow of our lives. Self-reflection allows us to see inside the walls and under the skin of our day-to-day bodies. We become aware of how we're supported and cared for and loved, even as we send an email or have a cup of coffee or take a shower. Because something is in the shadow doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It simply means we can't see it because there's an absence of light. And when we bring the light of awareness to that shadow, what do we find? We often find love. Quiet, inconspicuous, unassuming love. And that love brings a smile to our heart. Have you ever felt your heart smile? Try it right now. See if you can have your heart smile. Okage-sama. January 21st, 2019. Please mark that on your calendar, January 21st. It's the date of the next lunar eclipse. So what happens during a lunar eclipse? Well, the moon is engulfed in darkness, in a shadow. It's probably one of the biggest shadows that we ever see in our life. Now, if we understand a lunar eclipse, I would say we understand Buddhism. First, the huge shadow that covers the entire moon is due to the light of the sun. Without the brilliant light of the sun, there would be no shadow. And second, what is the obstacle that is blocking the light and creating that shadow? It's the earth. It's us. We are the obstacle. If we get out of the way, the shadow disappears and the brilliant light of the sun shines everywhere. So I'd like to finish my comments this morning with a poem by the monk Hosen. I stand on the tip of an iceberg, my life floating out of my control, unable to see the unfathomable mountain of love which carries me away each day until I melt into the ocean. Happy Thanksgiving.